Hello, in this video we're going to look at 9 ways that you can use ChatGPT as an R developer or data analyst in your day-to-day work. We're going to look at how you can use it to explain unfamiliar code, debug simple errors, add code comment, reformat code, make plots, do simple data wrangling, translate languages, translate programming languages, and as a kind of fluid find and replace. So let's go ahead and get started with that. So how do you go about accessing ChatGPT if you don't have it yet? Very simple, just open your Google window or any browser of your choice and search for ChatGPT. And usually the first result is the correct one here, so you can click on that and click on this Try ChatGPT button and then follow the sign up procedure. Now there are some countries where ChatGPT is unfortunately not available. If you are in such a situation, what you can do is use Bing Chat instead to access the same model. So to do that, you're going to have to use the Microsoft Edge browser. If you're on Windows, you should already have Edge installed. If you're on Mac, you may need to download it. So here's my Edge browser, and on Edge, I can just search for Bing Chat, and I will just follow the links, click on this first one here, and click on Try Now, and this will take me to Bing Chat. So Bing Chat is a way to access the same GPT model. Now, a quick note about the models that you can access through ChatGPT. You can access at the moment GPT 3.5 and GPT-4. GPT-4 is the more advanced model and it can handle much more complex tasks, but you typically have to pay to get access to GPT-4, so you have to pay for the Plus subscription. It is about $20 per month. I think most people should be able to afford that. Basically, if you have ever spent up to $20 or up to $10 on a meal, then you should probably pay for GPT-4 because it gives you lots of features that you can't get with GPT 3.5, and it will be extremely useful for your work. GPT 3.5 is available for free. There is another way to access GPT-4, and that is through Bing Chat. So Bing Chat is actually using GPT-4. However, Bing Chat has a number of features that make it a bit annoying to use for data analysis. I won't go into that at the moment, but I generally recommend that if you're doing data analysis, you should just pay for GPT-4 because it will pay dividends in your work. Now, another difference between GPT 3.5 and 4 is that 3.5 is quite fast. Because it's a small model, it can run much more quickly than GPT-4. And like I already said, GPT 3.5 can only handle fairly simple tasks, whereas GPT-4 can handle quite complex tasks. So as I run through these examples, sometimes I will be using GPT 3.5 and sometimes I will be using GPT-4. So let's take a look at use case 1. We can use ChatGPT to explain unfamiliar code. In this example, we have this trees dataset here. Trees is a built-in dataset in R, and it has these 3 columns: the girth or the width of the tree, the height of the tree, and then the volume of the tree. And we have this code that's doing something with that trees dataset, and we could ask ChatGPT to explain that for us. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to be using the GPT 3.5 model here because this is a fairly simple task. So I'll say, please explain this code. And in order to enter a new line in this ChatGPT interface, you need to press Shift Enter. So Shift Enter, and then I can paste in that code. All right. And then let's look at the explanation. So it's trying to give us an explanation here. ChatGPT tends to be a bit wordy sometimes, so this is a very long explanation. I can say, please shorten, and it should give us a shorter explanation. The code filters a data frame called trees to select only rows where the height column is greater than 80. And this is indeed correct. As a next example, we can use ChatGPT to debug simple errors. So in this chunk of code here, we have the trees dataset. Again, we select the height variable, and we filter for heights that are above 80. We store that in this object called data subset 1, and then we try to take a summary of data subset 1. Now there is an error in this code. See if you can spot the error, but I'm going to ask ChatGPT and see if it is able to spot it. I'll say, is there an error in the code below? Okay, and we paste in that code, and let's see if it can spot it. It seems indeed it has spotted it. So the problem was that over here we have data subset 1, but we tried to call the summary on data subset I. So there is a variable misnomer there, and it correctly identifies that and fixes it for us there. So wonderful. Now for use case 3, we can use ChatGPT to add code comment. So we have this chunk of code that is doing the same thing that the previous chunks have been doing, and we're going to try to add code comments to it. And we say add code comments to the code below, and then we paste in that code, and let's see the comments that are pasted. All right, so we have these comments. They seem to be very good. We can paste them in here. And this is wonderful because now when we send this to our colleagues, they can understand what our code is doing a little bit better. Of course, you should read through these comments and make sure they actually do make sense before you send them along to others. For use case 4, we can use ChatGPT to reformat code. So again, we have the same code chunk, but now the formatting is all messed up. It's kind of ugly. It's all on one line. There's too many spaces here and so on and so forth. We can ask ChatGPT to help us with that. So we can say, please format this code nicely. Okay, and we paste in that code, and it should give us a better formatted version of that. We can paste that in there, and we can run that to check that it actually works. And I can see on my console on the right that indeed it does work. Now we can also use ChatGPT to help us with making plots. So in this example, we'd like to make a scatter plot that shows the relationship between the height and the girth for the trees in this data set. So we'd like to ask ChatGPT to help us with that. Now, in order to do that, we're going to need to paste a little bit of the data set into ChatGPT so it understands the context for this data set. In order to do that, I'll come over to my console over here and print a head of trees. Okay, and I'll copy this to my clipboard, and this is what I'll paste into the ChatGPT interface. So here I am at the ChatGPT interface. I've written use ggplot2 to create a scatter plot of height against girth for the data set shown, and I'll paste in that section of data. And let's see if it can give us a good plot. So it gives us the ggplot code here. We can copy that and go and try it in our console and see if that works. So let's go ahead and paste this in and run that and see if we get a nice plot. Indeed, we do get a nice scatter plot. Now we may want to request some slightly more advanced specifications from the model. For example, we may want something like this. We may want to add a best fit line and write the equation of the line in the caption of the plot. We may want to mark the mean height and mean girth on the plot, and we may also want to center the plot title. So this is going to be a good illustration of the differences between GPT 3.5 and 4, because 4 will be generally able to do these things somewhat reliably, while 3.5 will tend to struggle on this kind of task. So let's go ahead and add these to the specifications that we want from our plot when we ask ChatGPT. So I'll open a new chat because the other one is getting crowded, and also so I can show you the difference here between GPT 3.5 and GPT 4. So I'll go ahead and try it first with GPT 3.5. I'll put first of all the initial prompt, which was this: use ggplot2 to create a scatter plot of height and girth for the dataset shown. And I add here also add a best fit line, mark the mean height and mean girth, and center the plot title. So let's go ahead and try that on GPT 3.5, and let's see what it gives us. Okay. So I'm going to grab all of this code here. That's what I need. And let's try that out on our RStudio and see if it works. So I pasted that in and I'll run that and let's see what it gives us. So it gives us the scatter plot, and we did have the mean marked, but it forgot to add the caption with the equation of this line. So as you can see, it didn't do it as reliably as we would like. Let's try GPT-4 now and see if it's able to handle this in a single try. So I'll go ahead and try GPT-4 here. And as you can see here, GPT-4 is doing something more complex. It is actually fitting a linear model to the equation of the line and pulling out those values that we need, the slope and the intercept. And it's going to paste those onto the plot. So it's doing exactly what I asked for. So let's go ahead and copy this code here. I don't need to define the data frame, so I'll just copy from here. Okay. And let's paste that into our RStudio again. And let's try to run this piece of code. We can remove this part of that. And let's see if it gives us the right kind of plot. And so here is the plot that GPT-4 generates for us. As you can see, it appropriately marks the mean girth and the mean height. And in our caption here, you can see the equation of this best fit line. So as you can see, GPT-4 is able to more reliably handle complex instructions of this kind. Now we can also use ChatGPT to help us with some data wrangling tasks. So I could ask it to give me dplyr code to find the mean and median girth, height, and volume for this trees dataset. Let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to paste in my request here asking for dplyr code to find the mean and median girth, height, and volume of the trees dataset here. And let's go ahead and see what it gives us. All right. And it gives us some code here. This is not very nicely formatted code. So this maybe is another illustration of the difference between GPT 3.5 and 4. This, I would say, is fairly ugly code. If a student wrote this, I would not be happy because it's very, very repetitive and unnecessary. What you can do instead is, well, let's just ask GPT-4 and see if it figures out how to do it. So we ask the same question to GPT-4. is you should be able to nest all of these different summarize statements into a single summarize statement. Let's see if it can understand that. Okay. So here it's actually using summarize all across the mean and the median. Let's see if that works. Okay. So I will just remove this code and run just this part. And indeed this works, and it gives us the mean and median for these three variables. So again, we can see GPT-4 being a little bit more intelligent than GPT 3.5. Here's another interesting use case. You can use ChatGPT to translate between languages. So maybe you have a tutorial in English, but your first language is French or Spanish, and so you want to translate that tutorial to your first language. If you try this with Google Translate, it won't work so well, because Google Translate will translate the code as well. You'd want to not translate the code while translating the comment and translating the general instructions. So let's go ahead and see that. So I'm going to try to translate this tutorial into Spanish. All right. So it says dplyr is part of the core of tidyverse, so it is automatically loaded when we load library tidyverse, but we can load it individually with library dplyr. So let's go ahead and try to translate that to Spanish using a ChatGPT 3.5 in this case. So I'll say, please translate this tutorial to Spanish. Okay. And we'll pull out this. And now we're going to test whether this translation is valid by translating it back into English. So I'm going to go ahead and open a new chat and say, please translate this tutorial, sorry, I can't type, into English. Okay. And we paste that, and you can see it comes back the way it should be. So dplyr is part of the core tidyverse, and it can be loaded individually. And there you have it. Now for example 8, you can use ChatGPT to translate between programming languages. So this is beautiful because it means once you've learned one programming language, you've almost learned all the programming languages, because it's very easy now to change from one to the other using ChatGPT 3.5 and 4. So in this example, I'm going to try to translate the following stata code into R. So this stata code is going to recode age groups. Ages between 18 to 35 will go into the group 1, and 36 to 50 will go into group 2. And let's go ahead and see if it can successfully translate that into decent R code. I'll just keep it in this session here. I'll say, please translate this stata code into R. All right. And let's see if it gives us something decent. So it says we can achieve the same thing using the dplyr package and the case-when function specifically. And indeed, this is very correct. Now for our final use case, you can use ChatGPT as a kind of find and replace. And this is useful in situations where the simple find and replace that you have in your development environment would be time consuming. So in this example, we take this population dataset, we filter to the country of Ghana, and then we pull out the population in the year 2000 for Ghana. And we store that in Ghana 2000. We do the same thing for Ghana 2010. We store that in there. Then we calculate the percent change, and then we plot it. But the important thing here is that Ghana is written in 3 different ways in this piece of code. We have Ghana with a small g here. We have Ghana during the filter with a big G. And in the title of the plot, we also use the country code. And so if you wanted to change this to run on some other country, then you have to change the code in all those 3 places. You have to do a find and replace across those 3 ways of spelling Ghana, of writing Ghana. But with ChatGPT, you can do this fairly easily. So I'm going to copy this code, and I'm going to say rework this code for Afghanistan. Or maybe rewrite this code for Afghanistan. Okay. And let's see if that works. So it seems to be working well. We have Afghanistan now with a small a for the object name. We have the Afghanistan with the big A for the filter. And let's see if it got the country code correct. Okay. A change in population in Afghanistan. So this didn't get the country code correct. It missed out that detail. This again is GPT 3.5. So let's go ahead and see if GPT-4 is able to correctly get that country code. So let me go back to that previous one, new chat here, and copy this section. And let's see if GPT-4 can handle that. All right. So it's pasting again the code revision, and GPT-4 put the code inside of a code chunk, making it easier to copy. That's again an example of why GPT-4 is a little bit better. So let's go ahead and see if GPT-4 actually puts in that country code in the title. That was quite important. So yeah, here it has put in the country code. So we can just copy that, paste that back into our code console and try to run it. And indeed, we have the plot for Afghanistan with the requisite title. Now, as a bonus, let me tell you 4 quick limitations of ChatGPT, and these are areas where you should try to avoid using ChatGPT. One limitation is that ChatGPT has a big lag in its training. So I believe ChatGPT only knows about things that were on the internet as at, I think, 2021 or maybe early 2022. So if there's some new software or library that was recently released, then ChatGPT is not going to know about this or how to use it. Okay? Or if there's an update to some old software, ChatGPT typically wouldn't know. They are working on ways of constantly retraining these models, but at the moment they're kind of stuck at the point when they finish training. Another important thing is that these models tend to hallucinate. That means they say things confidently that are not actually correct. So you should always make sure that you can verify the output of ChatGPT before you put that into your own code. Now another important thing is that you should avoid using very, very long prompts. So ChatGPT has a limited input length. I'm not sure exactly what this is, but play around with it and see what that maximum input length is. And even if a single message doesn't go above the maximum input length, after a while, ChatGPT is going to start forgetting some of the things you talked about earlier and earlier on in the conversation. So you should try to start new conversations frequently because, again, it is only processing a limited amount of what you give it, and so it forgets some of the messages that you sent earlier on. And finally, don't use ChatGPT to do any sort of data analysis directly. So you can use it to give you code to do data analysis, but ChatGPT has very weak math skills, so it's not going to be able to do the data analysis for you. So hopefully you found this overview useful. Learning how to work with large language models like ChatGPT is going to be very important for your work going into the future. So try to spend as much time as you can playing with these models and getting to understand how they work and how to get the most out of them. I'll see you in the next lesson. For now, bye-bye.